What are the qualities a person needs to be successful running an Airbnb business?
The biggest barrier with launching this business is getting
James Murphy running like hundreds of apartments in UK, Dubai, and having a massive coaching business. I bet you are making some serious money with all of these units.
the purpose of arbitrage is to scale cash flow and to buy wealth building assets out of cash flow.
Everybody on social media is talking about Airbnb, subleasing, arbitrage, all of that, but nobody talks about the hotel industry in the same way.
The perception of hotels is it's out of reach for people, but it's more accessible than people realize.
I don't think you can find a more saturated market than Dubai. Do you know why? All right, James Murphy, thank you so much for coming.
It's good to be here with you, Bergthor, finally.
Yeah, we've been trying to arrange this for a while, man.
And it's my fault. So we're here finally. You were ready, and I was pushing it. So.
I was ready for you.
Yeah, I was sick. I was really sick one time, so it wouldn't have been high quality.
Yeah, and I bet running like hundreds of apartments in UK and Dubai and having a massive coaching business, it takes a lot to manage.
Yeah, massive's a big word, but it's it's busy for sure.
It's busy for
enjoying
sure.
it.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little story before I get into your story. Like when I was moving to Dubai and thinking about sublease in Dubai, you were the only guy I could see documenting anything about doing Airbnb in Dubai. So
I was curious about that as to whether I was involved in your move over here, because I don't think I'd actually asked you that. Like, not in your move over, but if you'd been following me before you came.
I think I followed you as soon as I started thinking about Dubai.
Yeah.
When I started thinking about Dubai, which was like 6 months before I came here, I started looking for somebody doing it. And you were the only person documenting anything about doing it in Dubai. And
now everyone's documenting it, right?
Yeah, now everybody's documenting. It's crazy, but yeah, I reached
early adopter.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you are. Yeah, I reached out to you, and obviously you offered me some coaching programs. I had no social media at the time, so
yeah, it wasn't me personally.
Yeah, it was virtual
it was
assistants.
the team. I think we would have probably had a slightly different conversation. But.
Awesome. So before we get into your story from like start to finish, what do you think? Since you've been coaching so many people, what are the qualities a person needs to be successful running an Airbnb business?
I think the biggest barrier with launching this business is getting the deals done. So it's like that whole, I always say, once you pop, you can't stop, right? So it's about getting that first deal done, and that's where most of the fight is. Like mentally persisting, not giving up too soon. So I think. Once someone can get that first deal secured and get that over the line, there's a system and a process that you can follow that can help take care of everything else. But you can't help someone who gives up too soon. So that mindset. Mindset's a bit of a buzzword, a bit cliche, but it is like you've got to have a tough mentality. Because in different markets it varies, right? In terms of the ability to secure opportunities and deals, and some markets are more difficult than others. So
yeah, I bet. I think also like this, people underestimate how much skill it is to run, an Airbnb successfully.
For sure.
And it takes a while to get good at it.
Yeah.
So once you launch, you might not be profitable right away until you acquire the skills, to get the pricing right, get the reviews, the setup, and all that right.
100%. I always say. And teach my team to say this as well, that it's as much a business, business coaching as much as it is in the Airbnb strategy, because it is a business and businesses fail. People can often think that because Airbnb is popular and you just throw a property up there and magic happens and all of a sudden you're cash flowing and making money, but it ultimately it's a business. And so it's like anything, you don't rush into something without key knowledge to be able to execute and do it well. So I think when you see people struggling in the market, oftentimes, I don't want to say conclusively, but I think people can get overexcited and have a go, and some people will find their way through doing it that way, and others will find it very difficult.
Yeah, I think it was super easy maybe like 8 years ago, and also right after COVID, it was super easy. Anybody could just toss something on Airbnb and they'd make...
Yeah, because the stock had gone down.
Yeah.
So there's more there was not enough supply for the demand.
True.
Post COVID.
And I mean that's when I started, so that was a good time to start. But now it's just like anything else. Like if you're opening a restaurant, you can't just toss some food in the restaurant and be profitable. You know, you really have to get good. You know, just like anything else.
No, for sure.
So, tell me, so what's your portfolio look like now? How many apartments do you have in you have some in UK, you have some in Dubai. What's that like? Yeah,
so we from the beginning we started at ground zero, and we scaled by about 100 units per year. So 100 year one, which is the thing that most people can't get over, how we went from 0 to 100 in
what year
1
was
year.
This?
This was basically halfway through 2019 to halfway through 2020. So it was the COVID period. So it was quite an interesting time as well. And then, 200 units, 300 units. To be honest, we've then kind of over the last 18 months slowed down a little bit on the aggressive growth, because naturally when you scale to that degree for a long time, it can lead to cracks and things that you need to kind of correct and sort out. You know, so now we're between the UK and Dubai, somewhere around the 300 mark.
Nice.
So.
Most of them in the UK?
Yeah.
Okay.
So still majority UK. So we have about we've actually had a few leases end here. So we had at the peak about 40 here in Dubai. We've got about 36 at the moment.
Nice.
So.
Okay. And then you're also doing coaching. You got a big coaching business. How many people have you coached in total, do you think?
Yeah, so I think we're around pushing towards 700.
700 people that you've coached in total.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's a large community now, and I'm really passionate about the coaching side of things, because I think it's what the industry needs.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of average Airbnbs out there which obviously don't give a great experience to the customer. And then there's also people that don't operate correctly, damage a relationship with a landlord or a developer, and then that hurts those of us that are doing it well, because that bad experience means they kind of cut any kind of ties with operators, and it makes it harder to obviously grow your business. So I find teaching people to do it well, you know, you're improving the industry standards, and you're kind of professionalizing it, taking it out of like this kind of cowboy grey area, have a go mentality to something that's much more legitimate.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you're very good. You're good to the end user in general, because you're improving the quality of all Airbnbs.
Yeah, I think. And that, you know, you know this more than anyone. It's getting more and more competitive, and you have to really go to the nth degree to stand out. You have to be in the top percentile in terms of the quality of the property and what you do to the property to make it stand out. So, you know, I think it's probably more important than ever, you know, to be able to have a forum to work out how to have that edge in the market. Yeah. You know? And you're experiencing this, right?
For sure, yeah. Exactly, especially in Dubai, you know. The thing with Dubai, there's, you know, it's very saturated. There's a lot of Airbnb, people running Airbnbs, a lot of Airbnbs in Dubai, more than is needed.
Yes.
But also, the quality of them is mostly not very great.
Yeah.
Like only 10% of them are really, really good. And if you can put yourself in that 10%, you know, that makes you stand out.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just finding different ways to do that. Just using the best furnishing, photography, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah. Which is what you're documenting and doing well. And
thanks.
Great to see. So.
Yeah, thank you. But, okay, so I want to understand, like, how this all started a little better. Yeah. So where are you from originally?
So I was born down south in England in a place called Torquay, which is known as the English Riviera. So it's a seaside town basically.
Oh,
and
so it's got like white beaches and
not quite, but I don't know if there are any white beaches in England, to be honest. But thanks for the generosity towards English beaches.
Yeah, I thought there was like in the south there were some good.
I think there are some in Wales, to be honest.
Okay.
And maybe a couple in Cornwall. But so I was born down south, and then I actually moved to Australia when I was little for a little period of time. Okay. And then circumstances I think deaths in the family, etc. We had to move back to the UK. Then did kind of my upbringing in the UK. Then I'd always wanted to go back to Australia because it was kind of like regret for leaving as a family. And so then when I was 19, moved to Australia, did a decade in Australia, met Steph, had my first child, second child in Australia.
I didn't know about this. Okay. So
and I was a church pastor.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So you moved back to Australia when you were 19.
Yes.
And right away you became a church pastor?
Yeah, so I was in like it wasn't called a Bible, it was more like a leadership college, but it was essentially a Bible college, you know. So studying to be a pastor. Pretty like modern environment though, and quite a large environment. It was a big church. So like a lot of people ask me, like, because I've been in business for the last 5 years, how is that skill transferred?
Yeah.
But it's a lot of communication, you know. Like I'm having to inspire people, having to build teams.
Good for content too, because you're like on stage when you're a pastor, right?
for sure. I mean, I like at different points I've spoken in front of a small room of 10 people all the way up to like 10,000 people, you know. So you get pretty good experience of like how to connect with an audience in different settings.
Damn, so you've lived in Australia, UK, and Dubai.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I want to get into like the differences, but so before we get into that, so you were pastor for 10 years?
Yes.
And then did you start doing subleasing in UK?
Not in Australia. So a little bit of the property journey started in Australia. We I didn't earn much as a pastor. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So I was always hustling in kind of on the side. So I had quite a reputation amongst my peers, etc. Because I flipped cars. So that was where kind of I learned the entrepreneurial skill.
Flipping cars in Australia.
Yeah. So I started off with a 1987 Honda Integra. That I bought for $500 and sold it for $2,000, and I just basically kept repeating that over and over. And over about 4 years, I built up about 150,000 in cash
from flipping cars.
From flipping cars, yeah. So and then that's how we early on in that process there's a lot of land releases in Australia. So people buy land and then build homes. It's like extremely common. So if you think of like villa communities in Dubai, but you get to actually design the house rather than it being kind of a cookie cut. Okay. So anyway, the point being that when we bought the land, we didn't have the money to be able to actually build the house. So I was taking a real risk, you know, because we wouldn't have been able to essentially complete the project. So this is kind of where that risk-taking element kicked in, because we put the deposit down on the land. But because of the timing of it, the land went up massively in value over like the 12-month period whilst it was being remediated, ready to build.
What year was this?
This was 2014. So between 2014 and 2016, the land value shot up. And then basically with the car flipping alongside, we were able to use the equity that was now in that land plus the money that I pulled together to then build the house. But when I secured the land, we had no means to be able to do it, you know. So that was kind of my first property, you know, in the world of property. That was my first kind of project.
All right, so you built the house, and talk to me how did the transition to the UK happen?
Yeah, so I sort of became a little bit more senior in the church environment. It was a big organisation, and so I moved to England to start a new branch, basically, of the church in Birmingham.
Sure.
So
okay, why did you decide to become a pastor? Like, what happens to make you want to do that?
Yeah, so I didn't have like my mum was kind of a private Christian, but I was it wasn't particularly central for me personally in my upbringing, you know, and basically when I was 17, I had a good group of friends that were focused on study and etc. But we were also getting up to a lot of no good, you know. And so long story short, I was at a house party and I got into a fight. It's quite embarrassing, but I had this fight and basically the way it panned out, it was almost like I hit this guy, almost broke my hand from punching him because I was a little bit drunk, so I missed the spot that I was aiming for, and I hit him in the school basically, and then I got jumped from behind. Like it's a really embarrassing story, but I got pulled into the car, and I remember driving away because my friends had basically kind of pulled me out of the situation. My hand was shaking, and I just like sat there and was like, why am I doing this? Like, how did I get myself into this situation? Like, why am I behaving this way? Like, I just started having these thoughts, you know? And long story short, like, I think it was just a little bit of a like reevaluation moment for me in terms of like what I was doing day to day and the way that I was approaching life. And then I got invited to a big event with like a preacher basically. And he spoke a message. I felt like it was something that was really connecting with me from a spiritual point of view, and I kind of had a conversion experience basically. And then that's where that journey started. So, that's crazy. And I'm still like, even though I'm not in the church, I'm still a committed Christian, and family goes to church, etc. So, it's a big part of our lives.
Yeah. So you moved to the UK. You start, another branch, or that was the plan.
Yeah.
And how does the subleasing start?
Yeah, so again, coming back to the point of not earning that much money, basically, I talk about this story quite a bit, but we were running out of money every month, so always more month than money, and so we needed to figure out how to generate extra income. Steph had just finished a contract, and that ended.
Steph is your wife?
Yes, Steph. So I've got my wife Stephanie, and then Hunter's my oldest son. Phoenix is my 7-year-old daughter, and Riker is my little 4-year-old, so almost 4-year-old. So so I wasn't earning enough basically. We looked at how can we take a little pot of money that we have to build a business out of it. We met a friend that had heard about this rent-to-rent strategy or arbitrage strategy, and we sat down. One day he told us about it, and I was like, that sounds really interesting. Steph's like got an interior design kind of vibe, and I'm good with kind of doing deals, car flipping, all that kind of thing, So I feel like I could convince landlords to work with me, etc. So we just decided to give it a go. We had about £5,000 of our own cash, a £10,000 loan, and so we paid for some coaching, actually, some training, like just a weekend course. And that gave us enough to kind of sort of know what we were doing. Like, it wasn't, I'll come back to that later because it's part of the reason I started the coaching, actually, because it wasn't the best, but it gave us enough. So we got on with it. We secured a couple of properties, and they started to cash flow. And
this is 2019.
2019, and the first ones were in Sheffield, and they're actually a few hours away from where we live.
Sheffield, that's in the south.
North.
Okay, so I got you.
Yeah.
I feel like at this time, like 2018, 2019, this was before I started doing any like subleasing.
Yeah.
But I remember at the time I was getting like bombarded on social media with like ads for Airbnb coaching.
Yeah.
And back at that time, I was like, my immediate thoughts were like, yeah, this is a scam. This is a scam.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think we all like.
Yeah.
I actually paid for some coaching and then refunded it because I kind of got cold feet that it was like scammy, and it wasn't. But I kind of had that same sentiment that you did,
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, we really need some training, and I ended up going for it in the end. Mm-hmm. So yeah. We got those 2 properties in Sheffield, and the biggest lesson that we learned was that was like 3 hours away from where we lived. And so the first kind of, I guess, learning or kind of aha moment was going, we don't actually have to be near to these properties. We built kind of a remote team, and that's a big principle that I kind of teach now.
Yeah. Is
that kind of remote operation. So first couple of properties started cash flowing, and I was like, okay, this works. How can we take this forward, And we ended up, there were another 4 properties in that same building. So we ended up adding those. So we went from 2 to 6, got a couple in 2 different cities. And so I think in the first quarter of getting going, we got to 13 properties.
All right, let's go into the details a little bit on the numbers on these apartments. So the first 2 apartments, how much was the rent, for example?
Yeah, it'll be mind blowing.
Yeah.
For the time, we were paying £550 per apartment, 2 1-bedrooms. That's like almost impossible now.
Yeah, per month. Right?
Per month, yeah.
Okay, and then you put it on Airbnb.
Yeah.
And how much do you spend on furniture? Like,
yeah, I mean, we were
£5,000?
inexperienced, so we probably overspent, like everyone does, right? When you first start, I think you underestimate what the cost will be in getting up and running. So we spent about £7,000 to £8,000 on each property, which is pretty much all our budget.
That's a lot, especially for the time.
Yeah.
And then you put it on Airbnb, and do you right away start seeing profit? It just works right away?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that we were. I think month 1 we maybe made minor profit on one and broke even on the other, but then month 2 it hit profit immediately.
Yeah.
So and it was like around about $1,000. Let's say around £800. Profit per property.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great numbers.
Yeah.
So, and then you just scaled it to 100 apartments.
Yeah. So what happened was that building that we started in is actually quite central to the whole story, because over about a 4-month period, I ended up taking, there were 11 apartments in that building. I ended up taking all 11 properties. So it's a bit of a long story as to how we made that happen. Yeah. But that was the beginning of when I realized that I had a much more scalable model by taking multiple properties in one building. Because naturally there's an economy of scale there. And
easier for the cleaners and all of that.
Yeah, all of that. And you've got one location, multiple properties, even things like corporate bookings, you can house multiple people, So when that clicked, I was like, okay, this is a strategy, and I need to look to pursue this further. And so technically that 100 units only represented like 6 or 7 buildings. So you could say like 6 or 7 sites, but 100 properties across those sites.
Makes sense.
And that's how we did it, basically.
And was it all different landlords, or were some of them like a landlord that owned like 20 units?
Yeah, so that was the other big thing, is the realization, rather than like grassroots landlords dealing with like developers that have multiple sites, that became pivotal, because we built that relationship with the developer and did a good job, and then they went, okay, we're building another site. Do you guys want to work with us on the new site, etc.?
I feel like you are insanely good at making like relationship with high-end people. I went to a conference with you. That was the first time we met.
Yeah.
So who was the guy again? What was his
Ty
name?
Lopez.
Yeah, Ty Lopez.
Yeah.
Most people know who he is.
Yeah.
And you were just going to the gym with him the day before, and then
Yeah,
after and you texted him like at the friggin' event. Like how did you?
Yeah.
How are you so good at like networking with these people?
I mean, thank you. I don't feel like I am. I think it's one of those things that, like, I do believe that people are everything, So and I'm not gonna say the cliche saying of your network, but I think having that openness and kind of being confident in relationships, it is key. And Ty actually, like, I think with the growth of my Airbnb story on Instagram, he reached out to me, and funnily enough, we were flying to England. He was in London. He's like, I'm in London. He thought I was based in London because some of my content was London based, and he's like, can we get together for a podcast? And I was like, I'm flying I'm gonna arrive a week later. And then I was like, I think it was like 3 or 4 days later. So, but then I was like, do you know what? It's Ty Lopez. Let me see if I can change the flight. And so I got my whole family to fly like 3 days earlier, basically. And
was he as big back then as he is now?
Yeah, this was only last year. So
last year.
So
okay.
he's
cool.
a big deal. So
the 100 apartments, were any of them in London, or all of them in like South?
So I didn't. Interestingly, I didn't touch London for about the first 2 years.
Okay. What were the regulations in these areas?
So no regulations outside of London, and that was one of the reasons. I think there were 2 reasons why I was a little bit intimidated back then by London. First was much higher rent, so the perception of higher risk or being on the hook if things don't work out, which I think is a little bit of a false perception, and I realised that later on. And the second was like it's more regulated in London. So yeah, everything that we built for the first 2 years was outside of London: Sheffield, Manchester, Birmingham, like the home county surrounding London, a few cities down south like Torquay and Exeter.
And there's still no regulations in any of those areas?
Not at the moment. There's a consultation at the moment with the government to introduce regulations.
In the whole of UK?
The whole of England.
England.
Scotland's already rolled it out. Wales, similar, and England.
And what would that look like? Would that corrupt your business, or?
It looks like the indications are that all existing operators will potentially have like a grandfather rights to kind of get the permit and be able to operate. It will create more red tape and an entry barrier, a little bit like Dubai. Like you can't just take a lease and put it on Airbnb. You have
That's
to
a good thing
through.
then. If they're gonna let you do 12 months, but you have to like pay up front, have a bunch of permits and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think it'll be similar to what happened with HMOs in England, which is like renting by the room. So they introduced regulations like more than a decade ago for HMOs, and it's not stopped the rent-to-rent HMO model.
HMOs, most people don't know
stands
that.
for house of multiple occupancy. It's a big thing in the UK. It's the equivalent here of like kind of sharing by the room or like partitioned or whatever, So a group of professionals living in a house together, essentially.
Okay.
But that's another arbitrage model that's quite popular in the UK. And it hasn't really lost any steam after the regulations were implemented. It just meant there was more red tape that you had to kind of tick boxes on.
Yeah.
So we don't know fully what it will mean in its entirety, but I've got a positive sentiment towards it.
I see.
Because I think it professionalizes the industry. It takes it out of a grey area, makes it black and white,
That's the only good thing with Dubai, is how clear everything is.
Exactly.
But all right, so you started in 2019, scaled to 100, and then COVID happens. How?
Yes.
What happened then? Did you survive that easily, or what?
I mean, there's no doubt that it was like incredibly tough and a difficult time. I think there were challenges and opportunities. So during that COVID period, it was easier than ever before to do larger deals because...
Oh, yeah, to get new units.
Yeah.
So you kept expanding even just through
Yeah,
COVID?
so I was doing things like negotiating 3-month rent-free periods, and so like we were getting kind of crazy terms that you would never normally get, and putting like COVID clauses in, to have kind of exit routes, etc. And so we secured some amazing opportunities during that period. The big key throughout that whole time was contractors, key workers, and corporates, because all of that movement was still happening in the UK. So we basically pivoted to like an entire new strategy.
Oh, so you just try to get people that are coming for work and stuff like that instead of getting tourists.
And one of the lifelines with the hotels were shut down. So basically all of those people, because it was like self-contained, it was seen as like the safest kind of COVID type of
because apartments are more like you don't get in touch with anybody.
Exactly.
In hotels, everybody's in the same elevator, same hallways. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was still very tough. Like
did you make profit still through the whole thing?
I would say that we at a like property by property level, so gross profit across the balance, yes.
Wow.
It was stretching when you add in overheads, etc. as well. But we found ways to kind of make it through. Yeah. There was some aftermath impact, but everyone was in the same boat, So,
and I bet it was easy to get landlords to give you like, if you were missing payments, you could like easily negotiate with them. Like, let's lower the rent a little bit, and we'll raise it back later.
The most flexible period that I've ever experienced, where people were more accommodating than they'd ever normally be.
Exactly. Because even homeowners were getting their mortgages freezed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the thing in Iceland, at least.
Yeah.
Was that the same in UK?
Yeah, so kind of holiday periods. And then there was some good government support that was in the picture as well in the UK. I don't know it varies
Yeah.
obviously globally in terms of how the government supported, but the UK was, I think, pretty generous,
Yeah.
through that period.
So I mean, in London, I know there are some strict regulations, but it feels like people are just running Airbnbs in London still. Like, well, what is it
Yeah, I
like?
mean, this is a difficult topic because there are around about 60,000 Airbnbs in London, so it's a massive industry. And obviously, originally, those regulations were implemented because the hotels lobbied the government because of kind of the impact. A little bit like London taxis lobbied the government when Uber came into the picture,
Okay.
Similar type of thing. So I think the regulations were brought in because of that dynamic, essentially, to try and sort of stop things getting out of control. And there's obviously massive tourism demand in London.
Yeah,
So,
dude, it's probably like one of the biggest countries in the world, right?
Yeah. I think Dubai is now
Bigger?
no. I think it's either it's Paris, London, Dubai.
Really?
That may have changed. So
Yeah.
I don't want anyone.
Don't quote you on that.
Yeah, don't quote me. Someone Googled it and said you're way off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, coming back to the regulations, I think the reality is there probably are a lot of people that are operating, and maybe not paying attention to the 90-day rule. I think the good thing with London is that there is huge, probably more than any city in the world. There's an immense amount of demand for kind of relocations, corporate stays, et cetera, et cetera.
So you can do monthly stays, and there's ways to get around it legally.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
yeah, there's a way to operate within the legal framework, and so again, it's like anything, you have to evolve and adapt to
Exactly.
the challenges. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're coming out of COVID, so like 2021, I bet you are making some serious money with all of these units. Probably like, I don't know, you don't have to go into the numbers if you don't want to, but like probably well over $1 million profit per year.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is because we were always expanding so aggressively.
Yeah.
The funds always went back into
That's the biggest problem
growth.
with this business, man. Same with me. It's always like there's never any profit, because you're just spending on more furniture.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing is I just had a mentality of keep pushing and keep growing and reinvest everything, So we lived extremely modestly, to be honest, through that whole period, in terms of what we took out of the business, and so it just kept building it, kept taking it forward. So, but in terms of like the scale of things, like by the time we got to end of 2021, we were doing like maybe 6 or 7 million in revenue.
Okay.
A year.
Yeah,
So,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're doing great on social media, like really good. Like, at what point did you make content? Did you start that very early on the stage, or did that happen later?
No, not at all. In fact, that started really when I moved to Dubai. So we had a little period in the UK where I was putting some focus on it in 2021. Then I kind of paused it. I was kind of more focused on the business for a period of time and kind of tinkering and adjusting. And then, when I moved here, that's where I really started to make it a key focus.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What made you decide to come to Dubai? Talk to me about that process.
Honestly, so I set up so I had a kind of partner, like independent partner that helped us acquire units, so like a sourcer type scenario, and we had a really good relationship. He had a close friend in Dubai that was like, you should bring that service accommodation or short-term rental business to Dubai. There's like, it's a growing kind of area. And so he just dropped it as an idea one day. He's like, why don't we fly over to Dubai and like see if there's an opportunity to start the business in Dubai. And I'd never thought about doing a holiday in Dubai. At that time, like, it wasn't like a major focus social media wise. We know now, like, every social media influencer is kind of traveling to Dubai and posting about it, and it's like, it's very popular. But then back then, that it wasn't in the lens, it wasn't anything that we'd ever thought about. So it was very like left field, and but I was like, okay, I think it'd be cool to expand into another country. Let's go check it out. And literally we went, and we ended up setting up the license while we were there and securing our first batch of properties, and we just got going with it basically.
Okay.
So I had infrastructure in the UK, which obviously meant we could kind of leverage some of that.
Like
some of that
people
resource.
handling communication and stuff.
Yeah, like I'd got quite a significant team by that stage, like around, including like our Philippine staff, around about 100 staff, so I could send someone over like to kind of help get things set up, that kind of thing. But yeah, same thing, like as when we built any new city, we really did do it remotely with like a local team essentially.
I
So
see.
yeah.
All right. Yeah. So okay, and you start creating content in Dubai.
Yes.
And how did you blow up? Like you got like, I don't know, 300 thousand followers, 400, and
Yes.
and your videos are very some of the videos just blow up. Like a lot of them
Yeah.
get like 1 million plus views. I think one got like 17 million, wasn't it?
48.5 million.
48 million views on
Yeah.
one video, and it's all about like, it's very different from what I'm posting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about like, the exact what I'm doing behind
Yeah.
the scenes, and you're more about like lifestyle choices you've made, how it affects your life, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
I think we probably do about 30 to 40% kind of like business related stuff, but slightly
Yeah.
different approach to your style. Mainly because I'm not as much in like the day to day of kind of building things, so I don't always get as much opportunity to kind of document.
Because you've outsourced everything.
Yeah, the team's further along and just a different stage, really. Having said that, I am documenting a property launch at the moment. So
I saw that.
Yeah.
I like that.
yeah,
That was super cool. Yeah.
So looking forward to kind of fleshing that all out. But yeah, so we probably do about 60% kind of lifestyle, family oriented content, and I think. I don't know for sure. I don't know how people feel on the receiving end, but I think there's probably a resonance with like, that 25 to 40 age range, or 25 to 50, people that have kids and a family and are maybe looking to aspire to
Because
making some changes.
You talk a lot about your kids and
Yeah.
your wife and your family.
Yeah.
How you made the move from UK and Dubai.
Yeah.
But how did you get so good at showcasing that in such an engaging way?
Yeah, I mean, a real key with this is I've got great partners. So
Yeah.
I work with a team, Jeremy and his team, who are phenomenal in terms of like. I still have to kind of provide the base content, and so I would say that the success of my Instagram has very little to do with me. I would say it's predominantly Steph, because she is like good at documenting our lives, little bits and pieces, and I would say it's the team that we work with. But that's the principle of life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
all of the most successful people on the planet are successful not because they're necessarily the greatest, but because they put great people around them.
Yeah.
And that's something that I put a lot of focus on. Like, how can I be working with the best?
Mm-hmm. So did you just blow up right away when you started, or what was the turning
it's been
point?
pretty consistent. I'd say like I think we kicked off the new profile and kind of really pushing it around October 22. So about 18 months.
Okay.
Pretty much.
And that's
that
when
journey.
you started coaching right away. You started doing the content because of coaching.
So I had done some coaching in 2021 as well, like end of 2020 and 2021, but I'd sort of shut it down because I'd become a bit more focused back on the business again, and it was like pretty rudimentary. Like it was more of a side thing than a main thing. But when I moved to Dubai, I'd put basically a managing director over my UK business, and the idea being I wanted to now focus on building the coaching business and the Dubai portfolio. And so I kind of switched a bit of focus there, and that's where I kind of really honed in on that.
Okay, so you like outsourced your operations even more, so you had time to focus on the coaching.
Yeah, exactly right. Because I don't know how you feel about, like, I'm not like a really strong operator, like in terms of day-to-day operations. I'm much more of like a vision, like inspire, strategy, like that's my skill set. And so I've always tried to put people better than me, you know, in those roles.
I think also it's just like, it's the best use of your time.
Yeah.
Because you've already mastered something, you know, it takes a lot of time to do that.
Yeah.
If you want to do something more, you have to just train somebody else to take care of that so you can start doing something bigger.
Yeah.
So it's just I'm sure you're a good operator, even though you say you're not. I'm sure you are, but it's just the best use of your time to start doing something bigger, you know?
Yeah. And I think as well, like the stages to life, right? You know, I think you kind of, like business has life cycles as well. And I think sometimes it's right to have a bit of a shift of focus, you know, and somewhat transition. So,
all right. So let's talk about the coaching a little bit. So there's a lot of people that reach out to me if I do coaching. Yeah. And I always just say, like, no, I don't do any coaching. But
until recently.
Well,
it had a little dabble.
I had a little bit of dabble, but now I'm back to doing nothing again.
When we discuss this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not talking about the more recent discussions, but when we were at the Ty Lopez event, do you remember like what the things that I said in terms of the challenges of coaching? Like, did the kind of the summary or the advice that I kind of gave, did it sort of end up coming to fruition a little bit?
Yeah, you told me that it was very hard to focus on running a business and growing the Airbnb business and focus on coaching. Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% true. Because I feel like, you know, what I did is I created a little community. I posted in my story that I had a Q&A and I had it up for like 2 hours. Like almost 100 people signed up for the free Q&A. And I did the free Q&A and I told them like, hey, you can come into this community where we do this every single week. It costs $100 a month. 30 of them signed up. So I was like, whoa, I had this story up for 2 hours and I got 30 people already in the community. So, okay, I did the Q&A with them, like, but then I just felt, you know, okay, I can go into just scaling this like crazy, you know, probably, you know, make, I don't know, it's probably possible to make like $1 million a year off of this. But I feel like it's going to be capped somewhere, you know? And a lot of my focus and a lot of my energy is going to have to go into that. And I'm just thinking, I can't see, I just keep seeing this cap of how much I can make. And I feel how much energy it's pulling away from me. And I'm like, okay, what if I just keep growing this Airbnb business, put my 100% focus on it, and eventually it's going to change into buying apartments, buying hotels, you know, managing hotels, blah, blah, blah. And there's no ceiling to how much I can make here. So I'm like, I don't want my energy to be pulled into something where I think I'm capped at how much I can make. And also, I think it's not something I'm very good at because it causes me a lot of stress because I'm responsible for people that are like directly associated to me. You know?
Yeah, there's expectation on you.
Yeah, it causes me more stress than I think other people. I think I'm just a little more sensitive to that than other people. So I just don't think coaching is a very good fit for me. I think the only reason I would do coaching, and also because, you know, I'm only operating in Dubai, and it's a very small market. You know,
it is.
You know, UK is a lot bigger. America is insanely so much bigger. So a lot of people are going to fail. You know, so that's going to cost me a lot of stress. But the only reason I would go all in is, say I expand to America as well, and I get a similar amount of attraction on social media there. Then my market is just so much bigger, and then I could, the how much I would make wouldn't be as easily capped. You know,
I think there's a few things in everything that you just talked through. I think that one of the big things is, again, it's a fully fledged business, right? Yeah. So if you've got enough infrastructure in your existing business and you've got kind of senior leadership and it's running well and taken care of, then, you know, you can afford to sort of shift attention somewhat, you know. But it ultimately, in the context of trying to get a coaching business started, in the early stages, everything's going to come to you, and that it is demanding, and it can be draining. I think a lot of it's personality driven as well. Like one of the reasons I'm super passionate about coaching is I was a pastor, right?
Yeah.
So I spent my time like trying to help people. Like, for me as a pastor, it wasn't just about the spiritual life. It was about like having a holistic impact on people's lives. So whenever I spoke on a Sunday, it was like, how can I impact someone's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? That was my goal. It wasn't about like, oh, we're in church here together and this is where the focus is. It's like, how can I inspire these people to live a better life in the rest of their week when they're at work and when they're at school, et cetera, et cetera. So with coaching, I 100% hear where you're coming from. There's potential for failure. But then there's this whole side to it where people are aspiring to like make a change in their life and become more entrepreneurial. And if you can help unlock that in them, it's really rewarding. I've got 2 guys now, Sebastian and Josh. They came into my coaching and they had basically hit like I think 9 properties in Chicago in the USA, and it'd taken them like 2 or 3 years to get to 9 properties, and they were completely stuck. They just couldn't grow it, and so they are now, as of last month, I think they did $330,000 revenue last month, and they've got like somewhere between 40 and 50 properties, and it all started from like coming into the coaching environment, getting exposure to like a bigger environment, structuring things differently, figuring out how to kind of level up the business, and that's super rewarding. Like seeing someone go from like a small business to like this fully fledged kind of enterprise. And so that's one side of things. I always get asked the question when it comes to coaching, if you're making so much money from Airbnb, why do you coach? Like that's like, I feel like I'm a broken record on my response to that. But like there's 3 majors for me as to why I coach. The first is, like I said, I was a pastor and I love having that impact. The second, it is a great business model, and education has been sold throughout the ages. Everyone goes to university to pay a fortune to then earn whatever they earn, from pretty average incomes up to maybe more rewarding incomes. In the same way, if you're teaching a business strategy that can help someone reach multi 6, 7 figures, that knowledge has value, and it's a pathway to help people shortcut and avoid headaches and mistakes, etc. So I think knowledge is power, and I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with charging for that knowledge, And then the third that I absolutely love is it's the network. So I now have got students all over the world. Recently had someone come into the community in Japan. We've got a whole community growing in Australia. We've got a whole community in Canada, South America. Like, we've got a guy in Mexico that's killing it. I've just helped like with a kind of a hotel deal in Mexico. So I wouldn't have any of that reach if it wasn't for this coaching environment. And it gives me like great market research, and context on the ground. Like if I want to expand into America, I've got an army of people that like we're connected with, and I can go, okay, where's a good city to get started?
I actually felt that when I was doing my community. I had a guy in Oslo, and he was starting. I was super excited. I was like, okay, how much are you gonna make? Did you get any bookings? Yeah. I was super excited about that. But unfortunately, most of the people were in Dubai and wanted to get started in Dubai. Yeah. But I want to talk to you about that a lot too. So you say Japan? So they're subleasing in Japan?
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually know an operator that's got about 700 units across Tokyo, Singapore, and Sydney. So, this is the thing that I do love about like.
So you operate? Did you say that?
No, we don't operate. No, but we've got students that are kind of growing their portfolios.
And do you feel like the profit is very similar in all of the areas?
It's funny, like the numbers kind of
are the same.
Come out in the wash pretty similar.
It's probably just the market that makes it that way.
Yes.
Because there is a certain gap between long-term and short-term. Yeah. If it's too much, more operators are going to come in and it's going to shorten. As soon as the gap becomes too little, the operators are going to drop out, the bad operators. So there's always going to be probably a similar gap.
Yeah.
Just the market creates.
Yeah, it does. And I think like that global side, because you talked about like in the coaching space that you feel like there's a cap. I don't, like for me and my passion with it, I don't see that cap because my mentality is I'm building a global coaching business to coach in all markets. So I've got my UK coaching team. I'm developing our UAE coaching team, which you know about. I'm developing we've got a strong American coaching team, and I'm trying to now build an Australian coaching team.
I hear Australia is great.
Yeah. It's a great place for short-term rentals. So my goal is to build the first truly global short-term rental coaching business where we basically have coaches across all time zones in all markets. And the thing that I find really exciting about that is, and one of the things I love about short-term rentals is expanding internationally. Like I always loved the idea of, okay, I could have a property in England, a property in Italy, a property in New York, or whatever, New York's got the ban now, but I think the idea of being able to go beyond your borders and like explore and test new waters. So I'm like massively passionate about the coaching side of things and see huge potential,
Yeah, that really sounds good. If you're expanding like globally, then definitely it sounds very interesting. If you own an apartment in Dubai and you want to maximize the revenue you're getting, you need to run it on Airbnb and Book.com. A lot of people have asked me if I can run their Airbnb apartment for them, but I've always pushed that to the side just because it will take too much time away from my apartments. So what I've done now is I've partnered with two guys that have been in the industry for 10 years, and together we're going to start managing apartments for other people. Now, with them teaming up with me, I'm going to be able to truly focus on maximizing the revenue on my own subleasing apartments and the apartments that we're managing for other people. So if you want me and my team to manage your apartment and truly maximize the revenue you're getting on Airbnb and Book.com, fill out the form in the description, and either me or my team members will reach out to you. Okay, so I've always been thinking about, the margins in Dubai are very tight. So I've always been thinking
and getting more tight every month that goes by.
That's the thing, I think the summer is going to do us pretty good now. I can pick up a bunch of good units, but then after the summer, I'm like, maybe it's just going to...
When did you start last year?
So my first unit I picked up in August last year.
So you started at the tail end of last summer.
And that was a good time to pick up units.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't find last summer as effective as I'd hoped for like dipping rents, etc.
Okay.
Like there was some cooling, but I was really thinking like it's going to be like being able to get killer deals and and it's just Dubai at the moment is like it's just on the move.
But right after the summer, things shot up.
Yeah.
For sure.
And hasn't stopped really.
No, hasn't stopped. Except for now, it's kind of stagnated.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I can see it. It's getting a little bit easier to negotiate. So I'm hoping it's going to continue like that for the next 3 months. But I always have my eyes on the next market. If things are... I'm going to stay in Dubai as long as I can pick up deals that make sense. But I'm very aware of it. It could stop making sense. So I'm thinking about maybe I would go somewhere else. And USA is my... I like the USA so much because I spent a year there on exchange when I was younger. I played American football for 10 years, so I love America. What do you think is the best city in America to start doing Airbnb arbitrage?
I think we've already, like, the city that attracts me the most, probably because it's like the Dubai of the USA.
Miami.
Of course, but it is a pretty saturated space,
Yeah, I think coming from Dubai, it's not going to... It doesn't.
That's true.
I don't think you can find a more saturated market.
No, I 100%.
Do you know why? I think it's because owners are pushed into Airbnb more than anywhere in the world here.
Yeah.
Because long-term tenants are so protected in Dubai. You can't kick them out unless you're going to sell the apartment or move into yourself. So owners, they don't really want to put a long-term tenant.
They want more flexibility.
They want more flexibility. So even though they're not going to make more money, they would still put it on Airbnb. So
and the big thing is like in Dubai, people want to be able to sell because the market's shifting so much all the time. So they want to have that flexibility to move the property on.
Exactly, and they can't raise the rent as much as they want.
Yeah.
There's an index that protects the tenant for that
Yeah.
as well. So if you want to sell the apartment with a bad tenant in there, I mean a low rent tenant,
Yeah.
it's going to lessen the value of your apartment.
Yeah.
So all these protections for long-term tenants, it decreases the gap like we talked about earlier. So, and this only happens in Dubai. In Miami, nobody would even think about putting their apartment on Airbnb if it wouldn't make them more money.
Yeah.
You know? Do you agree with this?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm a massive proponent of short-term rentals full stop, because I do not like the idea of handing a property over that I own and giving someone else full control of that property. I would much rather, because we have this saying in England, no pay, no stay, like you can literally, and sometimes we've educated the police, like we've had someone that's trying to overstay or whatever, and they've not paid for an extension or whatever, and we call the police, or a team calls the police, and it's like, no, this is a civil matter, we can't get involved. And you're like, no, this is actually a short-term rental, like a hotel. They breached our agreement. They're actually trespassing on our property. It's a criminal matter. And so we've like been educating the police, and then they'll come out and they'll and they'll deal with them, because they assume it's a tenancy.
Yeah,
right.
Because there's so much more protected.
Yes.
Yeah,
because you can't, like, if someone's got tenants' rights, then pretty universally, like the US has squatters' rights.
Yeah.
In the UK, there's like security of tenure. So in all different markets, and it's the same in Dubai. Like, it's very protected for tenants.
I also, just because we have such good teams for short-term rental operations. I feel it's in Iceland. There's a bunch of properties in Iceland where I have to have on short-term rental in the summer and long-term rental in the winter, because of regulations. You can only rent out a certain amount of nights. And every time I have to put on a long-term rent, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so much hassle finding a tenant, charging a security deposit. I find it more hassle to get a long-term tenant in than just running my short-term rentals.
Yeah, I think like we're obviously very ingrained into our business, so naturally we're going to have a favoritism towards it. But I think for a lot of Dubai owners as well, it won't be the case for all of them, but some of them probably want flexibility to be able to use the property or have a friend come and stay. I always joke about living in Birmingham versus Dubai, because we lived in Birmingham for a couple of years. We never had a visitor in Birmingham. No one ever comes to Birmingham, So now I'm like, we're the most popular people in the world. Like, it's almost every few days someone's flying in. James,
Dubai. Everybody comes to Dubai.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, I'm so popular, but you're not popular. It's just they're here for Dubai, So I think that it's definitely got that whole people want to be here, have that flexibility, etc.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So, Miami, but what about the regulations in Miami? So
regulations is challenging in the USA, full stop, because it's state by state, sometimes city by city, sometimes town by town. Like there is such a vast difference, like place to place in terms of the regulation. So it is a bit of a minefield, to work out what locations are really effective. But Miami has started to introduce like some level of regulations, but Florida is a pretty business orientated state, just like Texas. So I think there's more free enterprise in like Texas and Florida than you find elsewhere.
Okay. So yeah, I hear there's a lot of gray area stuff in Miami where
It's probably similar to London.
Yeah, where it's like there are some rules, but people just forgotten about the rules. They don't really care about the rules. Nobody's enforcing it. It's just like old rules. Yeah. So people are it's like the Wild West.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, I always like recommend to err on the side of caution when it comes to regulations. But the reality is sometimes like using London as an example again, I think when COVID hit, they realized how essential service departments were to the infrastructure of the city. Because if those like Airbnbs hadn't been there, it would have been impossible to even function during COVID with like the kind of the importance basically of self-contained properties, you know, and I think that was brought to the forefront. So I almost feel like, you know, there's still evolution happening in the space, and kind of like even local councils figuring out how they navigate it and how they kind of get the two worlds to work together, you know. So I think things are still progressing and evolving, and it's a journey, you know. So I think some things will be like longer term reversed, you know, or replaced with different systems, you know.
Do you know of any cities in America where just completely like regulated in a way that you can rent it out as much as you want, like Dubai?
No, like off the top of my head, like with the same infrastructure, like there's definitely licensing systems in plenty of cities. Like Chicago is an example.
Okay.
You can get a permit. You're not allowed. I think there's a ratio, and again, don't quote me on this, but it's along the lines of within a building. I think there's a max of maybe 5 properties, and you can only have like one for every. Of course, Saeed. Would
he
know
said something very similar to what you said.
Yeah. It's along those lines. So again, there's a framework to work with. You know, it's and I think Chicago is a great city. So you know that's somewhere I'd probably consider. We've just had students in our community launch in Arizona. So West Palm Beach, got a few launching some properties in West Palm Beach.
Do you do any buying or anything like that, or you're just focusing on your coaching work?
I'm very passionate about real estate.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it's like the purpose of arbitrage is to scale your cash flow and to buy wealth building assets out of cash flow, not out of savings. This is a mistake most people make, and why their wealth building slows down is because they buy assets out of savings. You know, they save for like 3 years, pool all of this money together and deploy it into one asset, which might give them a minimal amount of cash flow, or even break even, or maybe be negatively geared, you know. So if you can build the cash flow, you know, through models like arbitrage, then if that grows enough, you can buy properties at will.
Yeah.
And it can be super powerful. Interestingly, I've just started forming a partnership with Oyo Hotels, and I've become good friends with the owner, Ritesh, and Ritesh is completely on the spectrum of leasing. You know, so
leasing hotels, just
leasing, like arbitrage as a principle. He that's like his governing principle, pretty much full stop. So he. Even though he's a billionaire, his entire focus is on like growing his leased empire, essentially.
So how he got? So I know you talked about this guy before the podcast. So this guy is like insanely rich, self-made. Did he do all of that by, you know, leasing hotels and having somebody operate it, or what?
No, so he's not. He's actually not technically. It's more tech based. So their main focus is like revenue management in the hotel space, and they're really trying to grow into the service department space as well. So they've got a little bit of a blend of models. But I think Oyo Hotels, where Ritesh and his team have done so well, is they've really focused on the technology and the techniques to maximize revenue management. You know more than anyone else probably that pricing and revenue management is
huge.
The key.
Yeah.
Would you say it's the number one?
I think that's...
Obviously, you have to have good reviews to supplement the pricing.
I think I'll tell you, the revenue management is definitely this biggest skill.
Yes.
Because that is what is going to be the hardest for new people to learn.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think just how you present the listing is number one.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be definitely a close number two, and definitely the hardest one to master.
Yes.
And so important.
Yeah. And a lot of people really struggle to get it right.
It takes so long to learn.
Yeah.
It's a proper skill. I'll tell you this. my first year of Airbnb arbitrage in Iceland,
Yeah.
with the skills I had then, if I had those skills right now, I would not be making any money. I'm only making money because of the skills I've required over 3 years.
Yeah.
And revenue management is, the biggest part, the hardest part.
It's so huge, and so I think that's where Oyo have done so well, is they basically come in and taken underperforming hotels that don't have solid revenue management strategies, branded them into Oyo, and then scaled up their revenue management and obviously their profitability as a result. And they've basically swept. It's 9 years. It's phenomenal what they've achieved, and super inspiring. And 40,000 hotel, like, don't quote me, but I think 40,000 hotels and 1 million rooms approximately, which is just mind blowing, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that whole revenue management model is very helpful for operators, because not everyone will be able to wrap their heads around it and nail the pricing and revenue management. So if you can outsource it to a company like Oyo or I met Oriel.
Oriel, yeah, I know him, yeah.
A guy that has a similar kind of Dubai-specific revenue management model as well. And I think that is quite an important plug-in for people that maybe are not as skilled in the pricing revenue.
I would have a very hard time trusting somebody with my pricing.
For sure.
But definitely if you're in the beginning
What you'll
stages.
find though, because I'm the exact same as you, I took care of all of our pricing and kind of mastered it up to about 150 properties. And then you really have no choice.
Yeah.
To start
I also think obviously if you hire somebody full time that's only going to be focused on this and nothing else, obviously it's going to be at least as good as you.
Yeah.
Versus me, I have so many things I have to focus on.
Yeah.
Obviously somebody that,
it's just dedicated.
Exactly. So you got a guy like that?
Yeah. So I up until recently it's changed a little bit because of our partnership with Oyo. So I had a full-time UK pricing and revenue manager and a full-time Dubai-based pricing and revenue manager, and then I've got this lady Nicole that's worked with me for about 4 years, who was my assistant when I was still doing all the pricing and revenue. So I would say she's an expert now, because she's been in our business for 4 or 5 years now. So I've always put quite a bit of focus on making sure that area is solid, but it's challenging, especially as the portfolio grows,
Yeah. So, okay, I have so many questions for you, but first let's touch on what's your partnership like with that guy?
Yeah. So we're sort of they're trying to expand they already have expanded massively their kind of short-term rental or holiday vacation offer across Europe. So they have a sub-brand called Belvilla, but they're not. They're I think trying to grow their presence in the short-term rental market in the UK, and so we basically started a dialogue around how there could be kind of a complementary relationship, and
I see.
And so it's sort of a I think it's deeper than a simple outsourcing of certain elements. I'd definitely say it's more of a partnership, and then obviously on the coaching side as well, I think there's a lot of people that need extra help with revenue management, so I can kind of link people to that service. And
yeah, because obviously you got such a big reach, and it's value for him to for people to know his product, obviously, and for you to offer his product to people that they need it. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's a alignment as well, just in terms of who he is as a person. He's a very generous individual. When I was with him the other day, I was shocked to hear that he still flies coach most of the time.
Economy.
Yeah, economy, and so I love that humility, and so I think there's an alignment in kind of values and principles. I'm not maybe some people will disagree following my social media, but I'm not one to have supercars and expensive watches and all that kind of thing. It's just not a focus for me,
Yeah, so. You talk about that a lot in your content. You'd rather just focus on your kids and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think like my family's more important than anything else, you know.
Yeah, true. I guess you probably kind of just lose interest in that kind of stuff also when you have kids.
Yeah, I'm not saying that nice stuff isn't nice.
Yeah.
But you know, it's priorities, and I would much rather, like I always ask my son, I'm like, if I give you $1 million, do you buy a house or do you buy a Lamborghini, you know, or Bugatti or whatever, you know?
And he says what?
He always like, thankfully I've trained him well, but he said the house because the house will pay me.
Oh yeah, that's smart kid.
You know? So that for me is always the struggle. I go, okay, buy that car, but that could be an asset, you know.
Yeah, true. All right, there was so many things I wanted to unpack from what we talked about earlier. One of them was, you know, the hotel industry. Mm-hmm. I feel like obviously I'm always looking like far into the future. You know, everybody on social media is talking about Airbnb, you know, subleasing, arbitrage, all of that. But nobody talks about the hotel industry in the same way.
Very interesting that you bring that up.
Don't you think that is concerning?
Yeah, no, and I think it's a major gap because I think the perception of hotels is it's out of reach for people because it's you're thinking at least a 10 room boutique at the very minimum, all the way up to like much larger hotels, and I think the perception is it's just for like corporation, like big hotel chains, etc.
Yeah.
But it's more accessible than people realize, you know. And I think it's a good step up strategy, you know, from kind of arbitrage and I think it's a good follow on.
Yeah.
I'm keen. Obviously, I've got this partnership with Oyo and Ritesh. I'm keen to explore how we can build some coaching and consultancy to help people acquire and build hotels.
So here's one thing that I know will happen. Yeah. I know I will get into the hotel industry and here's how I'll do it. So in Iceland, I've been doing a lot of buying apartments and cabins with creative finance.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, a cabin costs, you know, $500,000. Yeah. I get a 70% mortgage from a bank. Yeah. And I say to the seller, hey, let me pay you the remaining 30% down in 5 years. Okay. And you know,
are these hard to sell, these cabins? So like,
these are like either cabins that are hard to sell, or I just give them a really good purchase price, you know, a little higher than the market value, or I pay him interest on the payment, and he's like, maybe it's a guy that doesn't need the money right away, and he'll just take the interest, you know. So I've been doing a lot of this in Iceland, and at some point doesn't it make sense just to do this with a hotel? Like, obviously I have to I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, getting bigger cash flow, getting more experience, all of that. But at some point, you know, if just a hotel with 20 rooms or something like that, or even 50 rooms, cost, I don't know, $5 million, I can do the same thing. I can get a 60% mortgage from the bank, and I can sell the owner like, hey, the remaining 20 or 30%, I'll pay you down in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think in the UK, there's a model called lease options. And I think a really effective strategy, a lease option is basically where you secure a lease on the property with an option to buy it. At a predetermined date in the future. So the first 11 apartments that I ever secured, I've actually got a lease option on those 11 apartments. In 2019, we set the price, which still stands, and the 5-year option's about to come up. I think we're going to renew for a little bit longer. But I can buy that property at the 2019 price that we agreed at. Oh. And I have first right of refusal.
So you got those deals?
Yeah, I secured the lease option. So I think the value increase in the properties is around about £350,000 to £400,000 for the whole building. So I can actually buy that property for free. So I would put the money down, refinance it, and pull all the money back out. So that lease option strategy, and there's variations of it around the world, is extremely powerful. Yeah. And I think it's similar type of thing to what you're talking about. But I think there's a real strategy for that lease option model with tired hotel owners and bread and breakfast type operators, you know.
Okay, one thing, let's unpack that. But when you said tired operators, that's what I wanted to touch on too, because there's so many people in Iceland that have these hotel apartments or even just hotels, and they own it outright, no mortgage. So there's no pressure for them to improve. They're making good profit. They don't have mortgage or lease to pay. So they're just not operating it very good. So I'm looking at all these guys and I'm like, damn, they're running so badly. Yeah. So I could, buy it from them at, they think it's going to make this profit, but I'll improve it and it's going to make so much more profit. So So that's a good thing. But these lease options sound super interesting. It's something that I've never thought about.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's not easy to get a lease option deal over the line because you have to know the avatar of who would be open to a lease option first and foremost, and then you have to obviously be able to take the owner on the journey as to the benefits for them essentially.
Is this normal in the UK?
It's happening. I wouldn't say it's widespread because people just aren't effective at getting the deals done.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. So say you find a person that owns hotel apartments, 10 units, runs it as a hotel. Yeah. He's, getting older, he wants to get out of it. You go to him and say, hey, I'll lease it from you for 3 years. Like, I'll pay you this amount for 3 years.
Let's take it further. Let's say 10 years.
Okay.
Right? You normally, with a lease option, you normally want to go longer.
Okay.
Because you're going to get more benefit on the capital appreciation. Sometimes the owner will push back. Sometimes they'll like it. It depends on their scenario.
Yeah.
Do they want the cash flow security, or are they more interested in the exit?
So you could say to the owner, I'll take over the operations. Yeah. I'll pay you 90% in rent just of what you're making now.
Yeah,
that's an option because you're gonna increase the revenue by improving a bunch of things.
Yeah.
All right. So you make that split, and then over the 10 years, because of inflation, your revenue is gonna increase.
Yeah.
And then after 10 years, and you tell them after 10 years, I'll have the option to buy it off you for this price. Yeah.
So how it actually works is you pay them the fixed rent, right? And you get to take the revenue increase. So let's say it's 10,000 a month. You go, okay, I'll guarantee you for the next 10 years, 10K a month. And the purchase price that we'll agree will be £2 million or dollars or whatever, right? And so so normally there's a trigger point. So he might say, you can't activate the option for the first 3 years or something, right? Or he may not, or she may not, depending on who. But then basically once you've reached the point where you can activate the option, at any point from like the 3 year mark to the 10-year mark, if that's the parameters, you can execute the purchase. Having said that, if you've got the lease option and you're leasing it and you're getting the profits, it's better to wait.
Yeah,
because you're getting the benefit of I was going to say, why anyway.
And you're getting the appreciation anyway, because you have the right on that purchase price.
So it only really makes sense to execute the purchase at the final hour of the option agreement.
I'm thinking like, would any owner accept this? Because I'm so familiar with the Icelandic market. I'm like thinking if I would present this to people in Iceland, would they accept it?
So you've got to think through all the reasons why they might accept it. For example, impossible. It's a buyer's market. Like, it's a cold market for sales, right? So let's say right now it's difficult to sell in England. Just as an example, I don't know what it's like in Iceland at the moment, but because interest rates are high and all the rest of it,
Same, yeah.
So right now it's hard to move stock, it's hard to move property, especially more unique properties like a hotel, right? Because it's your customer base to want to acquire that is so much slimmer, right? Yeah. So what you're basically presenting is, I'll give you the security of knowing you've got a buyer for the property with a guarantee that firstly, the headache's gone. So I'm taking it off you and you're just banking in your pocket a fixed income every month. Secondly, at a certain point when the option becomes, comes to fruition, the sale's already pre-agreed, And it's really about getting the price point right for them.
So it's usually a little bit above the market value at the time?
Yeah, I mean, in my scenario, like in my first lease option, I just got market value, but you can offer a little bit above. I've seen people get below market value,
But I feel like so if I was an owner, you'd bring this to me. Yeah. I would say if I want to sell, I want the cash, But in this case, if I'm an owner and I'm selling on a lease option, I'm not getting the cash, and I stop getting appreciation, the rise in value of the apartment. So I'm like, why would I accept this?
So there's a whole range of reasons. Because it's a hotel particularly, it could be the operational pressure and headache, or that they're just tired of it. They just want the headache gone. It could be that they are struggling to make the mortgage payments, and so it's not as easy as just getting a quick cash buyer in, because the market's not conducive to it.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to sell like a proper business like that. It's because you don't have
100%.
It's not an apartment that people want to live in.
No. And on top of that, lending. So you really rely on cash buyers, because lending for hotels is much more complex than it is for a standard house.
Okay,
So
that makes sense.
people need really a minimum 40% down on a hotel, usually in most contexts, sometimes 50%. So much harder to get lending. So you like I said, your buying audience is so much more restricted. So the long and short of it is, it's 100% viable model to pitch. You just got to get the right individual in the right kind of frame of mind. You know?
Yeah, makes sense.
So it's like anything. You just got to find their pain points and offer solutions to those pain points. That's the key, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely going to see if that's something I could offer somebody in Iceland.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's shift a little bit. So I want to understand, what does your day look like now? Yeah.
I mean, the last quarter's been quite intense, because my previous managing director stepped down. I've just recently appointed a new CEO. I've got this kind of OYO transition and partnership happening. So I've been more involved more recently in the kind of handover process of all of that.
So you're CEO of the coaching or
of the short-term rentals? I see myself as the CEO of the coaching. So that's kind of that's my main responsibility. But in the last quarter, it's shifted a little bit more the other way.
So when you're a CEO of the management apartments, what are you working on?
Yeah, I mean, at our size, it's like there's a relative staff infrastructure. So I'm mainly focused on running key meetings, like a finance meeting, executive meeting with the department heads, looking at the dashboard, the KPIs, holding account, making sure that everyone's taking care of their areas. We look closely at reviews. We look closely at our occupancy, our pickup. I see that as like the like you're driving a car. It's your dashboard to know that things are going the way they should be. So it's that sort of thing. But in reality, like, I do CrossFit, so that keeps my head straight. So that's kind of my morning ritual. So every day I do CrossFit.
Really?
Wake the kids up, a little bit of time with the kids, head to the CrossFit gym, and then my day doesn't start until I've got that done, basically. Yeah,
man. I used to love CrossFit. I was all into CrossFit, but
did you get injured or?
Yeah, it fucked me up.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to be careful.
Yeah, I actually rolled my ankle a little bit on Tuesday, so it's a real thing. But the thing for me with CrossFit is I had a major knee surgery and nothing was working to correct my knee, and CrossFit has fixed my knee.
Wow.
So I can now I can heavy deep squat.
No way.
Which I was told I would never be able to do, right, by my consultant.
So I played American football for 10 years.
Right.
Brutal sport.
Yeah.
I was totally fine throughout the whole thing. But then I start CrossFit. I do for 3 years. And now I got like injuries that I've been trying to get rid of for 3 years. I had to have a hip surgery just because of You
had hip surgery because of CrossFit?
Yeah. I was just air squatting like 100 times. And then all of a sudden my hip like goes. And
you know what? I'd almost guarantee that there's probably something there for the American football.
I don't know, man.
How old were you when you started the CrossFit?
23.
Okay, so you're doing American football from 13 to 23.
Yeah.
Just starting to get older, man.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But all right, let's continue. So all right, you do CrossFit, and then what's next?
Yeah, so it's Mondays and Tuesdays are like my meeting days. So I basically stack it with all my meetings. So I have a blend of like my GPWN, the coaching consultancy meetings, and like my key short-term rental meetings. Tuesdays I try to do like one-on-ones that need to happen. So either with key personnel or with, like I've got a mastermind, so some people have one-on-one access to sit with me one-on-one. And so I'll do some of those meets on a Tuesday.
So Monday, Tuesdays are all your meetings. You just stack them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I finish, they're quite full days. Tuesday, I go like morning till late at night because I do my coaching calls.
Okay.
So I do about 3 hours of coaching in the evening. And that's all the coaching that I do. So that's kind of all wrapped up into that
one day.
evening. Yeah. So I've kind of heavy loaded everything Monday, Tuesday, and that's how I like it. Yeah. I like to do big days.
That's good.
And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I like my deep work, content creation, strategic thinking, all of that sort of thing is where the focus is Wednesday to Friday.
So you have in your calendar just time where you just sit on your computer and just...
I'll time block it for different things, but like basically Wednesday, so after CrossFit on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, generally 10 to 2 p.m. like today. This I fit it into my usual kind of content creation slot. Content creation or deep work, depending on what's needed more. So I'm in more of a content creation type space at the moment. So I'm trying to push that a little bit more. And then on Wednesdays Wednesdays and Thursdays I have kids activities. So I'll finish around 4ish and go like. My son has basketball on a Wednesday, and I'll just put the phone in the car, and I'll go in and I will just cheer my son down. I'll just champion him, make him feel like $1 million, and that's like my focus. And then come back on a Wednesday. We normally have because it's a later night for him, we'll have dinner with my wife and I and him, so he gets a bit of special attention. Thursday I do athletics with my other two, so Phoenix and the little one Riker. Okay. Similar type of thing, a little bit of one-on-one time with them, and then we get back and we do date night. And date night is like a non-negotiable. Actually, that's one thing I missed on the Monday. After CrossFit on a Monday, we do Steph and I do like a week plan kind of big picture plan, but that's more like personal and business related, whereas our date night's like romance.
But still, it's so awesome to align with your wife and
it's huge. Like the partnership, firstly, and I should have mentioned this earlier, Steph started the business. Yeah. So she deserves massive credence and credit because she kind of made it happen in the early days. I was there supporting, but she was a big reason we were able to get things off the ground. So she's got that entrepreneurial spirit. And now she's obviously in real estate. So she's a real estate agent. She owns her agency, right? Yeah. So and she's more focused on off plan. Your wife is awesome, man. I met her. Yeah. She's the way she communicates. She's so presentable. She's awesome. No, she's very, very gifted. So that's why I say with content and stuff, she's actually much better than I am in my opinion. So anyway, I'm probably slightly biased, but so that's what we do on Mondays, and that Steph and I being strong, I would say is the foundation of everything. Yeah. Alongside our my faith and God, but I'd say those two things are major for us. And on the weekends are just whatever. Yeah. So Fridays, I try and finish the kids have a half day, so I try and finish a little bit earlier. We do movie night as a ritual as a family on Friday nights. Yeah. Wait, I thought date all night was Friday night. No, that's Thursday night. Oh, it's Thursday. After athletics. So. Okay. Yeah. So Friday night is movie night. And that's kind of now, Hunter's a little bit older. He's now starting to go, can we have video game night after movie night? So it's becoming movie night and then game night. And you play with him video games? Yeah, Fortnite. He's a massive Fortnite. Oh, that's going to be, when I become a dad, that's going to be so fun. Because you have awesome. You have an excuse to play video games again. Yeah, so exactly. And I am a bit of a closet dork, closet geek. So what's really annoying though now is that he is getting so unbelievably good. Yeah. And obviously, reactions wise, I consider myself quite a good gamer just because I've always gamed. But now he smashes me, and so it's now gone to the other end where he's like, I'm not good enough to play with him anymore. He still likes playing with me. Yeah. But I know he's getting annoyed. How old is he? He's 10. Okay. So,
Okay, let's touch on this a little bit. How do you feel about, some people like, Pat David and some of these huge guys on Instagram, they keep telling like their kids don't even get any video games. What do you feel about this kind of topic?
Yeah, it has to be controlled,
Yeah.
But I like personally, there's a whole psychological argument that like escaping into a video game is actually healthy for your mental health, as long as it's done in kind of bite-sized chunks, So it does have to be controlled, It can't just be a free-for-all. And we see when we do allow him or our kids to play games for too long, it does have a detrimental effect,
Yeah.
So having said that, kids love video games, right? So like if you want your child to interact, like now most of the time he's on Fortnite with his best mates.
Yeah.
So I just see it as like they're
hanging out.
They're hanging out, So there's a big social dynamic to it as well.
Yeah, it would be tough if you would just completely ban it.
Yeah.
And then he would go to school. Everybody's playing these video games, and then he's kind of left out.
Yeah.
It would be kind of weird. Yeah.
So if you're trying to create some kind of robot machine child that's like perfect in every way, but social skills and being adept and having emotional intelligence, I would say, is arguably more important than like education, etc.
Yeah, good point. All right, and on date night, you just have a mate, watch the kids and.
Yeah, so we've got we invest in what's called a governess, which is basically the next level up from like a nanny. So someone that's like a teacher, so that they can support them with their educational development as well.
Really?
We're still around, but obviously we're quite busy with business. For me, I try and like make sure that my kids always see me in the morning when they wake up, and I'm there when they go to sleep, and I'm at their key moments, like their sports, etc. But I've got multiple businesses to run as well,
So they go to school obviously here in Dubai, and this person picks him up and drives him.
Yeah, we it's a blend. So we do a little bit, and I don't want it to be completely,
of course,
so we try to get the balance right. But that's a for us been a great investment because I'm not a teacher, right?
But she teaches them as
so
well.
So like homework and stuff, right? So
helps them with homework. It's like a tutor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like having a tutor, and to be honest, like I'll just lose my patience, right?
Yeah.
It's.
But having a tutor is huge.
It's massive. So so that allows us to then be able to go do date night and have.
Man, you've mastered your calendar. It feels like. Do you know this guy on Instagram that is huge about, I think he has a book it's called Buy Back Your Time. Do you know this guy?
No, but that's a massive principle. For me.
It feels like you've been studying him, but you don't even know him.
But from early on in my entrepreneurial journey, I look at time as the most important resource.
Yeah.
So I spend probably the most amount of money on stuff that protects my time.
Yeah, man. I'm so all about that.
Yeah.
But I feel, I read this book, Buy Back Your Time, and he, talks about hiring an executive assistant, which you have. I want to talk about that. Yeah. But how he puts his calendars into blocks.
Yeah.
He talks about stacking like you did, putting all the same similar stuff on the same day. But when I try to do this kind of stuff, it always messes up. And my routine is just free for all, always. I get a bunch of stuff done, but how did you get this so organized and keep it?
I think it's harder. Like you do need to have like team in place, etc. Like because if you've got things that are just in the day-to-day business that are interfering, like there are time periods where it's harder to stick to your kind of time blocking mechanism, etc. For example, in this transition of going from one MD to a CEO, for a period of time, I took back like the banks, and the financials for the UK business, and that's something that's like can be quite just interfere in your day. Like there's an emergency payment that's needed, and all of a sudden, so that's kind of sorted now, but you know, I understand what you're saying, that it can, if there's things that are happening in your day to day that you can't control or have contracted out to someone else, then it can be easy to fall off the wagon in terms of adhering to that, you know. But like the principle is, for me, anything that's taking my time that's outside of what I want to be focused on, I work out how I can contract that out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a journey. It's something you kind of level up.
It's really something I have to do, because there's so many things I want to do, but I just don't have time to do that.
Yeah,
I want to sublease in Abu Dhabi, but I just haven't gotten to that.
But some of it is potentially you've not accepted the trade.
It's the thing.
You know, because you might have to pay, you might have to lose some level of income. Yeah. And in your mind, you're going, okay, but I'm going to lose X amount of money and cash flow, and you've got to weigh up. Okay, will that bring about more return? All
right, so teach me a little bit. So what would you do in this scenario? So right now in Iceland, I'm the CEO. You know, I've got a cleaner like cleaning manager, and I got a handyman. All right, and they communicate with my Pakistan virtual assistant and all that. But I still have to fix fires all the time. Neighbors complaining, that always comes to me. Landlords complaining about stuff always comes to me. And I'm setting up this cabin now. I gotta coordinate, the cabin cleaning crew to go. I'm still coordinating all that. But should I hire a CEO to buy back my time to be able to?
I mean, I don't think, because how many properties do you have?
30.
Yeah, so I don't think you need a CEO. No. I would like look for like a good solid operations manager. So the way I always, and this is stuff that I teach in my coaching as part of like business progression, I always look at like, I would say you are too big in Iceland to not have a key hire. Yeah. Right. So you've got your housekeeper, you've got your handyman, you've got your VA, but you need like a team leader.
And on a UK standard, how much would you pay him, and how would you structure the salary?
Like, for an operations manager that's good, you're probably looking around about £40,000. You know, so
for the year.
For a year, so like $3.5K a month, roughly. You know, so I would run the maths. You know, what's your average net profit in a month? Yeah.
Okay. So I'll tell you that hiring somebody that like on that salary would be no problem at all if they would take everything from me. That would be so good.
Now, but it's obviously hard. There's a scale, right? So if you want someone elite, then you might go a little bit higher than that. You know. Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's just hard to find somebody really qualified and motivated to take all this. You know, it's hard. But
you've got to put the focus on it. Like, otherwise it will never change.
True. So. It will never change. All right. So what about an executive assistant? Tell me what they do for you.
Yeah. So I'm very blessed. I've got Shireen, and Shireen is exceptional. I really struggled to hire an executive assistant. I've got a lady in that's like a virtual assistant in our Philippines team. She was my first executive assistant back in the day, but she was a virtual assistant, right? But she's phenomenal. And she's now like our chief of staff for all of our Philippine staff, and she's got like a very senior role. So I truly believe that like virtual assistants can carry senior roles as well. You just got to find the right quality, you know. So ever since like she basically was so good that I put her into another role in the business, you know. So she stopped being my executive assistant, and then ever since then, this was between like 2019 and 2021, right? Ever since then, I never found anyone that was at the level that she was at. So when I got to Dubai, I'm like, like my life needs coordinating, you know, and I'm not high on organization. It's just, you know, natural personality type. So again, you find someone that's really good at it, right? And you put that skill set around you. So I was like, I've got to find a top quality executive assistant. So
it's hard to find, man.
I started off interviewing at like 6,000 to 7,000 dirhams a month.
Okay.
Got nowhere.
Yeah.
Then I was like, okay, I'm gonna bump it up. Let's go for like 15,000 dirhams.
It's like $2,500 a month.
Yeah, a bit. 15,000 dirhams is probably more like $4,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're starting to get into like good quality
salary.
PA territory.
Yeah.
And then like I'm not gonna talk about where we ended up just because it's personal to the person I eventually ended up hiring. But let's just say like you get what you pay for, and I ended up not finding anyone in that next tier, and I was getting so frustrated because I'm like, I need this so desperately, and I would say it's probably the most important hire for me because it just makes me so much more effective.
But I it's how much control do you give them? Do they answer your email?
Low key stuff, and then like important stuff goes into like a high priority list, and it's like.
So she filters your email and sends the good stuff to you and answers whatever she can answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like what I was looking for was someone that could really carry weight, so that if like I'm late to a meeting on Zoom or whatever, she can be on the meeting and kind of put it in a holding pattern and be able to handle that, where the person's not like, who am I dealing with? You know, like high professionalism, like high emotional intelligence, like. You know, so she'll keep everything on track in my diary. If it's running behind, she'll rework stuff. She will prioritize like all of my urgents from like high priority to low priority.
And she's puts your calendar together and sends you like, this is your calendar for today.
Yeah. She will like if there's something super important, she'll time block, knowing that that's got to get done. And then she will somewhat actually coordinate like my key reports as well, like hold certain elements to account, make sure reports are coming through to me.
She's working every day, just tracking your schedule, seeing how things are going, making changes.
Yeah, she like. I can't really think of a time where I've messaged her and not had a response within like 90 seconds.
Nice, yeah.
So she's on it, you know.
Also on the weekends?
Like I think with an executive assistant, it's like you kind of need someone that's willing to be interrupted at the weekend. Like I'm respectful and I try to like not invade like late nights and all the rest of it. But a good executive assistant knows that they're needed sometimes outside of hours, and they'll always kind of make time. So I can, if I need her, she'll be available.
Okay. And where is she from?
She is British and lives here.
Okay, yeah. All right, I got you.
Yeah.
So
that was like, I was looking for that progression of like, I think you can get someone really good that's like virtual, you know, or like remote. But I was kind of looking for that next progression of having someone that could be around as well.
I see, yeah.
So
that's super interesting.
Yeah.
We're almost running out of time. So one thing I want to touch on too is your CEO here in Dubai, because that's something at some point I'm going to be hiring. So
yeah, I don't have a CEO here. I have a CEO that oversees.
But who writes the checks when your contracts are?
I've got a manager.
A manager that, you know, when contractors are renewing with an owner, the owner or agent directly
that
contacts.
Will take over your entire life if you don't have that person in place.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I'm at 100 apartments, it's gonna, you know. But, you know, I mean, I got my assistant that takes care of the communication with all the agents, but still I have to do the checks and sign the contract. So you have a manager that the agent or owner just contacts him directly. He writes the checks.
He can write the checks. He can do the Ajaris. He can do everything operational. He can take care of.
He pays salary too. He actually makes.
I've got a finance team that does that stuff.
Okay.
But he could, like, in principle, yes.
Okay, and so this is all with like UAE bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But so you have at least managed to outsource, you know, everything from paying salary, writing checks, you know, all of that stuff. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. I think like I can see for you that you're at that point where you need it as well. You know? Let me ask you a question before we finish as well. This is your first full low season. Is there any part of you that's nervous, or do you feel
good question
confidence?
So when I came to Dubai, everybody was telling me how I was going to get crushed in summer. I was going to go bankrupt. It was going to be, I had no chance. So I was super prepared how bad it was going to be. But it's not as bad as I thought, actually.
So, and are you seeing that into July, August, etc. as well?
Yeah, so I like to lower my price far out in the future and
Yeah.
get booked very far into the future, especially for low seasons. So the bookings I have now into the future, at least for all my established apartments, they have me just slightly breaking even. Like, losing money. I'm going to be losing money, but I'm losing less than I initially calculated.
Yeah.
And the luxury I have is summer in Iceland is the high season.
Yeah.
Just like you have
So
in
you've
the
got
UK.
the offset.
So I got the offset that balances things out.
Yeah.
So I'm not nervous at all.
Yeah.
It's just as planned or better than planned. So it's great.
And what sort of like ADRs are you seeing like in your 2s and 3s? Like you say that you've drastically reduced.
Okay. So I'm seeing anywhere from 600 to 800 for my 2-bedroom apartments. Dirhams per night.
Yeah.
Before paying the Airbnb fee.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
And last question from my side, is the dream still 100? Like you've not shifted on that target?
Yeah, so as long as I get deals that make sense, I'm going to keep going until 100. But I'm fully aware that, it might change. Maybe after the summer, rents keep rising.
Yeah.
And deals stop making sense and I'll have to stop.
Yeah.
But 100 still the goal.
It's good. Good to hear. You're on mission.
On a mission to 100.
Love it.
Yeah. There's one thing I wanted to ask you, but I forgot. Yeah. Yeah, but we've been talking for almost 2 hours, so I think
good.
I think we're all good.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the chat. So
yeah, thanks. When I was moving to Dubai, it was very hard to get a hold of you, obviously. So it's thinking that now I sat down with you for 2 hours and just talk about whatever.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Thank you for coming.
I appreciate it. And I think we got, like, as I said to you, relationships are so important, right? And I think when we started to obviously chat and be on message, I think it was a great way, like with us having gone to that event together, we just got to get to know each other a little bit,
Yeah.
And
that event went for like 10 hours.
Sorry about that.
No, it was fine. It was fun.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, and hopefully there's value for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want your coaching, where do they reach out to?
Yeah, they can so I've got actually a 5-day challenge next week. So I do these every quarter. And so 5 days teaching pretty much everything you need to know start to finish on how to build a short-term rental business. So you can go to my bio link, James Z Murphy, click the link in the bio. That's obviously short-term. Longer term, if you're watching this in the future, then you can just DM me and my team will be able to help. And
James Murphy on Instagram.
Direction.
We'll put that in the bio
James
too.
Z Murphy, yeah.
James E. Murphy. All right.
Z.
James C. Murphy.
James Zachary Murphy. That's
I got
my
you.
middle name, yeah.
Yeah, we'll put that in the bio.
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right, perfect.
Thank you
so
Bergthor.
much.
It's
Yeah.
been great.